Hello and welcome to episode 4 of the Betfred Boxing Show with me, your host, Rob Tebbutt. As always, I'd like to remind everybody to please like, comment and subscribe. Turn your notifications on for more boxing content. Now that's out of the way, I'm delighted to be joined this week by Mr. Andy Clarke and a very special guest, Mr. Sonny Edwards, as we review this weekend's boxing and look ahead to this weekend's boxing. But before we do that, as always, guys, how we doing? Well,
yeah, good. Had a good day yesterday. It was the British Boxing Board of Control Awards for 2025. I was hosting that, so it was good fun. It's a really good fun day, that. They've kind of, I think they sort of nailed the format, putting it on a Sunday. It was absolutely packed out. Loads of former fighters, past, present fighters there, which is always good, and some big name winners, and they all came. Everybody came, apart from Usyk, but I think we can allow it, can't we?
Sent a video though, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he sent a video message. Yeah.
Good stuff. Sonny, thanks very much for joining us. Obviously, you have had some big landmark occasions in your career. This must be right up there, making your debut on the Betfred Boxing Show.
All the way up there. I can't believe it's taken this much in the catalogue of work to finally make it.
Well, actually, you say that, but going back to when we originally started the podcast, so I kind of look at, I know I'm a well-travelled man in this industry and kind of tend to... You're
the boxing media version of a journeyman. That picks up some titles here and there.
Yes, yeah, but yeah, the odd title. Occasionally score an upset, but anyway. 2018 is kind of the start of the podcast in its various kind of forms. Dave Allen was the original co-host of the podcast.
So now you're going to say I have done it years ago.
You have done it years ago. You came on with Charlie, yeah, in the box, in the studio, the hand-built studio that I made with these hands. I'm not very much of a worker.
Wasn't it a room with a boxing?
It was in the office at Boxing Social HQ, as it was at the time, in Old Street, and you came in at the time. You were, I think you'd just beaten... Might have been after the Ryan Farag fight, I think.
Far back, yeah.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. Charlie was the WBC champion. But yeah, so technically your second appearance on the show.
Technically.
But a lot of water under the bridge since then. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. Got up nice and early. Caught my train to get down here today, so yeah, flying.
No British Boxing Board of Control Awards for you at the weekend. You were jet setting, weren't you? You're always here, there and everywhere now.
Do you know what? I got invited by Ash from Undisputed. Obviously, they sponsored the awards this year. And I would have looked to go because, yeah, it's always a great day. It's a great evening. See everyone. Also, a lot of the passionate boxing fans as well get a table. And, I was delighted to see that Dalton came away with an award. I did think he won Fighter of the Year award because in the gym they were talking about I thought no, he's not going to get considered his fight against Matias because obviously it's this year, but someone in the gym reckoned that they're doing to dates now or something and it was considered, but the fact that he won an award, I was buzzing. But yeah,
we'll hand over to Andy Clarke, who's kind of the rules and regulations man on the podcast.
It's not complicated. It was for 2025. So, yeah, you were right. His fight was in 2026. So he got the Denny Mancini Award. It's a special recognition award for outstanding performance or contribution. Josh Taylor got a similar kind of thing. Fabio Wardley got Boxer of the Year. Eubank Ben, the first fight, got Contest of the Year. Chris wasn't there. Connor was, which was interesting after kind of recent events. Ben Davison got Trainer of the Year. Moses Itauma got Boxing Writers Young Boxer of the Year, which has kind of been taken over by the board because the Boxing Writers Dinner is no more. Nigel Travis got a special recognition award as well, which was great because he didn't know. I very nearly
ruined it
for him when I saw him on the way in, and I kind of said something about, so you're ready to come up on stage, because I just thought that you would tell people.
Yeah, I think fighters normally know if they're winning.
Yeah, because otherwise they might not come.
Yeah,
it just seemed to me. But I think what the board do is they go to great lengths to not do that. So they'll kind of, I know with Nigel they were talking to Jamie Moore and said, Jamie, we need you to get him there. And I know you guys normally come, but we really need you to get him there because he's going to win this thing. And obviously you can't tell him, but we just need to know that he's going to be there because we don't want to tell him and ruin it all. And yeah, it worked. Because he's a really, he's a good talker, Nigel, but he was kind of quite stunned by it, I think.
Yeah, I think they usually tell you if you're half saying that you're not going, they try and edge you with you are winning.
Yeah, I think.
I remember when I went to one and Joe Gallagher won it, he came out of like a 4-page speech about people being horrible to him on Twitter and that. So it was like, well, he definitely knew he was winning, didn't he? Like, you don't come with
To be fair, he could have just had that in his pocket, just ready to dish out at any given moment anyway.
Probably. Just stops everyone and just reads it out. But, yeah, it was good to see everyone down there. Did you see the Conor Ben? June McKenzie, did you see that?
I saw that they reconciled.
I saw after the event that it had happened. Yeah, he was, he was in heavy demand, Conor.
Of course he is.
Which
Man
is
of
to
the
be
moment right
expected.
now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's to be expected. He turned up about. I don't think he was there for the dinner, but he came with plenty of time for his award and plenty of time to
fashionably late.
Just do a lot of photos and all that kind of stuff. So it was a good day. It's always a really, really good day. And there was another special recognition one as well for a trio of boxing news editors, Claude Abrahams, Matt Christie, Tris Dixon. Yeah. There was a lot going on. I really enjoy doing it because you do the roll call where everybody in the room who's all former pros basically just stand up and get a clap, and I think people enjoy that. It's just a bit of fun. But a lot of big names there yesterday, a lot of big name winners, and they were all there. Like I say, Usyk left us a message, and no one seriously expected him to come over to win, I think, Overseas Fighter of the Year for the second year in a row. I know, maybe it wouldn't have been. Anyway, whatever. It was a good time was had by all.
Kind of imagine like Nigel Travis going up to get his award and Tommy Cole coming running, pulling his pants down from behind him. But it sounded like a good one. Right, before we get on to talking about obviously last night's show, which was Jai Opetaia against Brandon Glanton, not for the IBF cruiserweight title, just in case anybody was curious or didn't check Twitter for the last 72 hours. Sonny, let's talk about you. Kind of mention that you're here, there, and everywhere at the minute. You're enjoying yourself. You're managing. You're taking Barry Jones's work. You're doing all sorts of stuff nowadays.
Yeah,
you're literally taking his job today.
Do you know what's crazy? I was messing about when I retired. I said to Barry out the ring, I went, "I'm coming for your job now." That's what I said to him. The look on his face, he didn't take the humour of it. And but in all seriousness, no, really enjoying it. I've had a lifetime so far of attending boxing events, being in a boxing gym, supporting fighters, travelling up and down the country to different countries to watch boxing since I was 9 years old, really. So me being as active and as busy as I am around boxing is nothing outside of what I've sort of grown accustomed to my whole life. I think too many weekends in a row without boxing, I start sort of cracking up. I don't really know what to do with myself. But yeah, I was in France on the weekend meeting a fighter over there. I'll be in Dublin at the weekend for Bobbi Flood's debut for the Cacace Jazza bill. But yeah, just flying right now, really, to be honest. Working with some great talent in the management stable, working alongside with and at times under one of the best managers in boxing, Anthony Fitzpatrick, who steered my career from the first day and still is involved in all my conversations now, and sort of natural community we're building of great talented young fighters, the gyms and sort of hubs of boxing that we're working with as well. Yeah, I think everything's going really good. Obviously, I've also got the Matchroom commentary side of things and the small talk. Just really, since I've been out the ring, staying as busy as possible and looking to get as much done. And sort of the big priority for this sort of chapter of my life is to start the ball rolling on some good, young, hungry, talented fighters and sort of bring them through and develop them as a group of fighters, rather than, really just worrying about, like, pretty much all the fighters I speak to now are fresh coming from the amateurs. Like, I don't, unless a fighter comes to me to sit down and speak, I don't really approach or, really entertain the idea of working with someone that's already sort of a half-built project or halfway through their career or coming back from somewhere. I like starting a relationship when everything's fresh. I like trying to make sure that they're guided the right way, built the right way, don't get thrown into the deep end too early. As we know, boxing has a constant pressure of trying to do to all of its young fighters. And yeah, just really enjoying the journey. I got to bring my son to Leo and Ish's last fight in Nottingham, the Lee Wood card, and he got to see what I do on that side of things, and he absolutely loved it. Can't wait to come again. So you know what I mean? I'm in a great position where I can't really complain, and working with some fighters that I genuinely believe, you know, a handful of them are going to be the next crop of headliners, the next crop of stars coming out of this side of the world. And, you know, with some of the conversations I've been having more recently in other places as well.
But we were going to come on to this at the end, but as soon as we're talking about it now, we might as well kind of stay on it. You got your Leo Atang official merch. Check it out now. DM Sonny if you want a Leo Atang.
Sponsored by Yella.
There we go. Yeah, how good can he be? Obviously, we're kind of in an age now, you kind of mentioned it there, that all fighters, you know, it's thrust upon them to do everything straight away and everything straight out of the bat, particularly when you're a, you know, young, good-looking, capable heavyweight like Leo Atang is. How good can he be, and what does the next 12 to 18 months look like for him?
I don't think there's a ceiling necessarily. I genuinely believe he can go all the way. Not only are we getting him at an age where we can really develop him and mature him and sort of take the fights bit by bit and build the foundations of the house brick by brick, I really believe that because, when we're talking about heavyweights, I always talk about when the heavyweights started, what size they were, what weight they were when they started. For me, that's a massive thing. I think you can look at, say, like Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua, and you can easily pick who started at about 6-7 years old and who started at about 18 years old. The reason why Moses Itauma is so good, you can see that he clearly started moving like a boxer at a far smaller size than he walks around now. And Leo Atang's the same. He was having his first fights at around 48, 50 kilos. He started when competing, I believe, when he was about 13, 14 latest, and he just kept growing. He was boxing and moving like someone lighter than I am now, and now he's gone all the way up to heavyweight. He's still got that control of his body and his footwork and that sort of explosiveness, and his version of nerves, because obviously he's a young kid, he's had a lot of pressure, a lot of promotion thrust at him. On his debut, he was unveiled as part of the Matchroom rebranding, standing next to his boxing hero in AJ and Frank Bruno, and you know, that was fight week. And then straight into a fight. Obviously, he's performed great every time he's been in the ring. But the first couple of fights, he was shaking a little bit of nerves off, as you'd expect any sort of young adult, as young as an adult as you can be, sort of as soon as they hit their 18th birthday, having meetings with and getting offers from all the biggest promoters in the country. And look, it's definitely a long way to go yet. And the team's intention isn't to break any records, be the youngest of doing anything, because we have a very, very, very good prospect there that we believe could, you know, by the age of 25, 26, be heavyweight champion of the world and then still have another 10 years at the top of their game. Do you know what I mean? And that's the plan. And, you know, if we deliver for Leo, I believe he's that good that if anything happens on the way before getting there, then that's on us. I don't think it's on Leo. I believe he's that good. He works that hard. He wants it that much that it's all about steering him, and he'll go all the way. And I genuinely believe that.
Before we move on, just staying with Leo Atang, I thought he was very, very good in his post-fight interview last time out. After, you know, inevitably there's going to be the Itauma comparisons and people talking about that and comparing and contrasting both of them. He, as well as yourself, have kind of been quite quick to, you know, obviously back your guy to go on and be what you think he can be. But those comparisons at this stage of his career, you've kind of done well to, I guess, push that to one side and just focus on what he's doing.
Yeah, it's mad. You know, on Leo's debut, and then Moses fought not too long again after that. I'm in, you know, parts of group chats with groups of friends, and you know, not everyone fully in there will know that I'm involved with certain fighters, etc. But I'm seeing in there Leo Atang and Moses Itauma can't be another AJ Fury. We have to see that fight soon. It's like Leo's just got out the ring for his debut, and he's already getting linked towards Moses, but that's a compliment that the fans are organically doing that. They're in a stage where, you know, our heavyweights who have been great over the last 5-10 years are all sort of, for the most part, coming to the latter stages of their career now, where, you know, maybe performance has dipped a little bit, levels has dipped a little bit, and we're waiting for the next ones to come through. And we can clearly see right now Moses Itauma as a shining light beacon of British heavyweight boxing, and with a lot of years on his side, you assume it's going to be for a long time to come. And because, bear in mind, there's a lot of other heavyweights out there, without naming or picking anyone out, pointing anyone. There's Commonwealth Games medalists, there's Olympians, and no one's sort of getting talked in the same sort of bracket coming through right now as what Moses and Leo are. And I think it's because not only are they young, exciting talents, they clearly pass the eye test. You know, they clearly pass being in control of what's going on, not really taking a shot, either of them, for the most part, but also landing damaging blows and being very, very exciting. I think it sets up for what should be a great period of British boxing. And let's face it, if they both get to remote, well, Moses is already pretty much at world level, really. But if Leo gets there as well, and they're there at the same time, that will probably be one of the, you know, main fights we want to see at any given year, at any given time. And that's exciting for the future. And we have a lot of respect for Moses, and we like him personally in any interaction we have with him. And it's not a fight, like I said, that we'd be looking at pushing onto the plate anytime soon, because, like I previously explained, for Leo to be a fully developed, fully mature 12-round fighter, it's going to take some time. It's not going to happen overnight. He's, you know, only recently turned 19. He's still a baby, even though he doesn't look like one. But definitely a fight that we would intend to see in the future at the same time, because Leo wants to be the best, and you have to fight the best to be considered as. So, yeah, I think it's really exciting times and a journey that I'm already more than enjoying and very excited to be a part of. I think, you know, the job we do with Leo and are doing with Leo is already serving as a statement, but it will be one of those sort of, as a boxing manager goes, you know, sort of legacy fighter potentially, if everything goes right.
Well, we look forward to seeing it. Right, okay, Andy, going to come to you first from last night. Jai Opetaia. We love these Sunday night shows when you have to be up on a Monday morning for the podcast. Shout out Dana White for that. Yeah, the Friday night ones are much better. But anyway, Jai Opetaia successfully defended his Ring Magazine title, won the inaugural Zuffa Championship belt. The IBF stuff we'll come on to shortly. I'd like to get your opinion as a proud former IBF world champion yourself, Sonny. But a comprehensive win, I felt, for Jai Opetaia last night against somebody in Brandon Glanton, who, look, we've seen him in the past against Chris Billam-Smith, somebody that we know well on these shores, obviously. But Jai Opetaia pretty much won every round. And I thought, you know, despite some of the criticism that has been online about his performance, I thought boxed pretty well over 12 rounds.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think Glanton is one of these fighters where people can tend to go one of two ways with him a bit. We were talking about this before we came on air. He's very, very tough. And a lot of the time people love tough but quite limited fighters because they've got a lot of heart and they hang in there. But sometimes they decide that they're lacking in that ultimate ability level and therefore not very good. And people seem to have gone that way with him, really. I think he gets disrespected a bit, to be honest. I saw him live at Spurs against Chris Billam-Smith, and it was a good fight. It was a competitive fight. Billam-Smith won it comfortably enough on the cards, but you got a sense of what Glanton was. He was what he was supposed to be. He was what people were saying he was. So he was never going to be easy for Opetaia, and he's kind of awkward as well to an extent. So I'm with you. I thought he boxed well, Opetaia, and the build-up to it wasn't ideal. There was a lot going on during the week. Like you said, we'll talk about the whole IBF scenario, but Opetaia, over a period of time now, has proven himself to be a really high-level fighter, and he maybe hasn't had the fights that people would have liked to have seen him have, but that's not because he hasn't wanted to have them. They just haven't materialised.
So I'm going to come to you on Opetaia as our kind of now resident technical expert. Obviously, we've seen a fair bit of him as well as kind of a foreign fighter or an overseas fighter. Boxed a few Brits in the past. Obviously, had those 2 wins over Myris Bradis, long-time champion and long-time kind of divisional great at cruiserweight. Where do you assess Jai Opetaia? What do you make of him as a fighter? What do you like? What maybe don't you like?
I really rate him. I think he's as well put together as, you know, any sort of other cruiserweight takeaway Usyk in the last however many years. I think he can box, he can control the range, and he can absolutely take your head off, and he can choose to win in a variety of different ways where not too many fighters at world level can do that. They usually have to stick at what they're really best at, and if that goes well, then they get he can fight, he can box, he can fight fast, he can slow it down. Like, I think he can really, you know, pretty much do most things that are needed, and I think I've not been surprised that there's been, it's probably a bit of both. There's been maybe a lack of willingness from the correct opposition at times, but at the same time, I think he's so good and at cruiserweight where maybe it's at a stage right now where it's not the strongest weight division, with quite a few of the good cruiserweights have moved up to heavyweight around world boxing, etc. And I just don't think there's that many really worthwhile dancing partners for him right now in that division. And okay, he wouldn't be the biggest, but he's every bit big enough and good enough to go up to heavyweight, I believe. We see it with Usyk, you know, the much smaller man has come and beaten absolutely everyone far bigger than him. So if you're that good, the size doesn't always matter, and maybe that's what he's going to have to do or have to start looking at, because I couldn't really sit here and reel off like 3 or 4 fights at cruiserweight that I'd really want to see him in. I couldn't, because I don't know who's really going to challenge him or beat him.
There's the obvious one, Andy, is May the 2nd. That's probably the biggest fight in the division since Usyk's been down there, I would say, in Zurdo Ramirez against David Benavidez. David Benavidez obviously a 2-weight world champion, interim belts at light heavyweight, but moves up to cruiserweight. I think that's for the for the WBO and WBA cruiserweight titles. I'm sure there's some sort of WBC moniker knocking around in the background. David Benavidez had 2 of their belts at super middleweight and light heavyweight. Great fight. It would seem to me like that's probably the fight for Opetaia. If you're looking for kind of a big fight for him next, it would be the winner of that on May the 2nd. Yeah,
it'd have to be. I'm sure that would be the one that he's looking at, because like Sonny said, you struggle to think of too much else, to be honest. And I guess this does lead us on to the whole IBF discussion, because he is still talking about becoming undisputed. He mentioned it in the press conference again after the fight, didn't he, I think? And that matters to him. And that would appear to be at odds with the promotional company that he's signed with. Or is it? Because they were happy enough to have the IBF title in that fight on the weekend. And it's going to be very interesting to see what way all that kind of stuff goes, because obviously they've got this mission statement, or they appear to have, which is the Zuffa belt and everything being pushed towards making it 1 belt per 8 weight divisions, they're saying. But again, is that going to stay the same?
It was supposed to be the original 8, which obviously cruiserweight wasn't.
Yeah, they've added cruiserweight and taken away flyweight, haven't they? I think is basically what they've done. But what I find really interesting about all of this stuff is, are they going to move their own goalposts?
They kind of already have.
And they kind of already have, and that's what I think people are maybe missing with them a little bit, is that, yeah, these are big, bold people, very capable people who've got track records doing this, that and the other, and you maybe look at them and feel like they give off this vibe where we're going to bulldoze everybody, we can't compromise, it's our way or the highway. But they've been doing this too long to think that you don't need to be able to adapt, because intelligent people are adaptable. They might see something and think, okay, well, that's not really going to work actually. So what's the best way to do this? And I look at the whole thing and feel like they've done these 4 shows. They've done them the way that they said they were going to do them. They're not really paying too much attention to the criticism of the live gate or the venue or anything like that. It's just get the train on the tracks, get it rolling, and then we'll take it from there and see what we're going to do. But they have definitely rattled the establishment, and I'm not really sure if the sanctioning bodies are playing this exactly right at the minute, because even if you are rattled, you don't want to look like you're rattled. You need to, I think, you need to try and stand strong and just say, listen, these are new people on the scene. There's been new people before. We were new once. They say they're going to do this and they're going to do that. Let's see. We've been doing this a long time. Business as usual for us. We're here to stay. Nothing's changing. But you do get a slight sense of, I don't know if panic would be too strong a word, but the effect that they wanted to have, Zuffa, I think they are having it, but they're being helped by their opposition responding in, I think, the way that they would have wanted them to, which I guess is that's a good bit of psychology and whatever else you want to call it in itself. But it's just such an interesting marketplace at the minute. I mean, we talk about it a lot, don't we? I don't remember a period like this really in the time that I've been covering boxing. You feel like anything can happen and quite a lot can change quite quickly.
Boxing, the wild west of sports, and a new sheriff seems to have kind of waltzed in, and there's another sheriff here and another sheriff there, and they're all going to kind of
been a load of sheriffs. That's the thing. Yeah,
it's always been a load of sheriffs. Who's got the biggest gun and who's got the quickest straw?
Yeah. Exactly that. It is really fascinating to watch. I mean, it's fascinating to watch. But another thing on the weekend as well was that Opetaia kind of, he had his own shorts pretty much, didn't he? I think
he had custom Zuffa shorts.
Yeah, so there you go. So there you go. That immediately, that's something that, well, maybe that's not set in stone. Then it's.
I think they approached the sport trying to apply the UFC business model. I think that's clear to see. Apply the UFC business model, the structure of, get the fighters, get them sort of wrapped up in almost like 360 contracts where their shorts, their sponsors, their everything, their decision making is all in under one roof. And I think there's more chance of martial arts being revolutionized to copying a similar business model to boxing. I think that is only ever a couple of years away, but I think the idea of creating a sort of UFC-esque boxing premiere, as in like one company is the premiere of boxing, I think that's a much, much harder job. And I think, the Hydra of boxing has so many heads, and there's so many different hubs and pockets of people sort of running the same system. You have the boxer, the manager represents the boxer, the promoter approaches the manager, they get on deal, they either agree a long term or fight by fight, etc. And trying to sort of wipe out a long standing sort of industry pattern of business to then just flip it on its head. Whilst you're overpaying, you'll make some move and you'll make some noise, but I just can't see the Zuffa belt without, I'm talking absolute billions of investments. I'm talking probably at least 5, 7, 10 years of consistent having the main fights of the year, having the headliners, because there's so much of boxing where when UFC was established, there was probably a handful of borderline seriously taken mixed martial arts companies in the whole world, and then UFC broke out as like the sort of main one. Then you had the others sort of underneath them, but they all kind of stuck fighters fighting within the promotion. And in boxing that just doesn't work. And all the fighters that turned pro and maybe won titles and had their plans and dreams before Zuffa was even thought about, like Jai Opetaia, will still have desires to be undisputed champ. He's won world titles. He's been the Ring Magazine #1 for however many years now, and the champion for how many years now. Does he want to go the rest of his career and retire off now with what he's won and the Zuffa, or does he still want that moment where, you know, and the new undisputed champion of the world and all the belts get draped on him, and it's sort of an iconic moment that goes down in history? We've seen it every single time it's happened in boxing, and I don't know how much money is going to take them dreams away for it to happen at the rate that Zuffa want it to.
What's really interesting though, and I agree with all of that, but they're coming in hot and heavy, aren't they? Big and bold, like we're going to do this. They have to disrupt
it. They couldn't keep it with their first two shows.
What I would love to know, and they probably don't even know themselves yet, but they may have an idea of, okay, we're going to do this, knowing that's going to be really, really hard. What we're actually aiming for is this. We're saying we're going to do this, but realistically, it's probably going to be this. What are they going to be willing to give ground on, and what are they not going to be willing to give ground on? Because if they're not going to be willing to give ground on anything, I think it's going to make it even harder. Because if you're currently in one position and you're trying to move a long way towards another one, rather than just make no progress because you won't compromise on anything, you may just stay exactly where you are and spend loads of money. But if you compromise on some things, you can at least make some progress, get your feet under some tables, and that's where you can kind of work from there. And these are like, sometimes people say they really care about something when it turns out actually they don't. It's something else that they really care about, and then they can look like they're giving ground on one thing that actually they don't really care about.
It's like a smoke and mirror while they're focusing on what they want. Exactly. But I do think that they've made all their business going on for at least the next 12 months a lot harder for themselves, though, because, you know, without playing devil's advocate on it, they've theoretically paid a boxer that's never won a title 15 million for one fight, and there's probably never been a UFC fighter that's earned 15 million for one fight. I don't know. I don't know that much about UFC. I don't know how much Conor McGregor, etc., is making at his prime, but I'm sure when he came over to boxing, he was making a lot more when he fought Mayweather. And it's always been the sort of comment from the fighters and people that do like MMA, UFC, is that the fighters aren't probably paid at every level as fairly as they should. And, you know, when they've just made a big deal of signing Conor, and obviously the purse has basically gone out there, you've got every UFC fighter, UFC champion, and every boxer that would entertain the conversation with Zuffa right now and not just the ones that need an opportunity. I'm talking about the ones that have got something going, a good relationship, just like Conor had with Eddie. Anyone that's in that boat is going to be looking at Conor and go, well, I'm bigger than him. I've won more than him. I fight at a higher level than him. There's bigger fights that, and then they're going to be absolutely caning the negotiation table. And I don't know, we've seen it with Saudi when they first come in. We've seen it with Boxer when they first come in.
The Zone.
When you come and overpay, you instantly see the reaction it has in other places. Like, you know, when Eddie was throwing his offers around and sending emails, and Adrian Broner was leaking them. Now every other fighter is looking at that going, but if you're offering him that and you're offering me this, that doesn't make sense now. So it's making conversations harder. And I think with how big and dramatic the whole Conor Ben move is, I think that's perked up a lot of his, especially when there's still a question mark on what level this fighter really is. I think the biggest surprise of all of it was that Matchroom creating at times the illusion that Conor Ben is like a high level world ranked fighter has been one of their most biggest success stories and achievements of promotion, because I've just never really seen it. Like, from my eye test, he's rugged, he lets his hands go, he's aggressive, etc. But we've seen him, you know, line up 5, 6, 7, 8 retired then come back fighters, or lightweights who've gone up to 147 now fighters, and all of these fighters were pretty much, anytime they stepped to a certain level, career losers. That's what he's been built on. And then he's had the Chris Eubank Jr. fight, where the first one he lost, and the second one it looked like a shell of any version of any Chris Eubank Jr. I've ever seen. He's never looked that bad before. He looked fragile from the first bell. You know, Chris Eubank used to lose, and if he lost, he was still physically the man in there a lot of the time. He got in the ring that last fight, and he was, you know, he half looked like Bambi on ice from the start. His legs looked really shaky. He didn't look strong or composed or anything really. And you're theoretically given an unproven fighter, you know, one of the biggest purses of the year, and then going to speak to all the rest of boxing, like, would you like to come over to us? They're going to be like, yeah, for a bit of what Conor's having. Do you know what I mean? And I don't know. I think it makes it a boxer's market, which is great. But I just don't know how much damage Zuffa are going to be able to do in a time frame that they're happy with, without absolutely doing their arse in purses and fees. And
would you take one of your fighters over?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And depending on the fighter, if they've got something consistently going somewhere else, then for them to head be turned, they would have to pay more because they've already got their nice streamline of where they're going. They've got a team behind them, etc. But like, as a manager, you'd have to offer it to the fighter, whether or not I thought it was the right or wrong thing. If the offer came through, you put it to them, you advise them. And like I said when the news broke, if this was handled in a more transparent manner from Ben's side, I think Eddie and Matchroom, I don't think they would have, you know, tried to put a hard stop on it. But they would have looked at Tom Aspinall, the talent agency has been now launched. They would have probably looked to stay a part of it some which way and, you know, do it that way. Because if they're offering way much more money for a fight, it probably makes sense for Eddie to not put no money up and just take a slice of the pie. I think the more like Eddie and the other promoters are looking at it, when you have all these other infrastructures of promotions, you'll work with them because really you're getting your flights booked for, your hotels paid for, you turn up, sit ringside and get paid off your fighter. Do you know what I mean? There's no outcost, there's no work, there's no hassle. There's no hassle. If anything, a promoter having a fighter on another promoter's card, especially if it's big and well paid, is the best thing that can happen right now. And that's why we saw all the promoters turn into managers with Saudi, really, taking over their fighter to represent them, be part of the show. Because they ain't had to book the hotels, they ain't had to pay no staff, they ain't had to deposits for venues, they haven't had to do anything. They've turned up, massive fighter gets in, hopefully they win. If they do, they come in with the belts and a nice % chunk of change for Eddie as well. And what I think might have been oversighted a little bit is, you know, having a team around you that genuinely support your best interest rather than just look at you as the sort of like the poster boy, the one to put in front and put you in a fight, put you in a hard fight, etc. Having that team behind you, like genuinely protecting your best interests, and it's worth its weight in gold sometimes when it comes to what level you achieve in your boxing career. You know, having actual protection of a promoter. It doesn't mean, oh, because you're a promoter you're not going to lose. No, it means just things are guided around your timeline, your time frame. You take the fights when you're ready for them, rather than sort of, you know, you would expect with Conor, they fight Regis. I know there's some disputes whether it needs to be on a certain card, etc. for contractor reasons. I'm sure they'll figure out their way around that. But if he's getting 15 million to fight on the undercard of a fight, then the next fight, you'd think they'd be looking to put him in a massive fight. You wouldn't think they would, you know. And I think Regis is a hard fight. I think people are very overlooking him. I know he's a bit past it. He's a bit smaller than Conor, but Conor started at around the same weight. And Regis has always gone up a lot heavier. And Regis has, dare I say it, definitely won multiple times at a higher level than Conor's ever been boxed at.
Oh, yeah, no question. You look at the resumes, there's no comparison between the two, really, is
there? And he might not be the best boxer, Regis, but neither is Conor, so you're expecting a proper fight.
Yeah, I mean,
a shootout.
I would have maybe expected that before I saw Regis Prograis against Jojo Diaz in his last fight. He got buzzed a lot in that fight by a featherweight, really, in Jojo Diaz, who's really, no disrespect, spent more time in rehab than he has in the boxing gym in the last 2 or 3 years.
But that didn't do Ryan Garcia bad, did it?
Yeah, well, that's a conversation for a different time. But look, just kind of playing the other side of it, I guess. Like we spoke about this briefly when the Conor Ben story broke a couple of weeks ago when we did the show. The other side of it is TKO Holdings, who obviously own Zuffa Boxing. They also own the UFC. They also own the WWE. They're worth $41 billion.
Yeah, so they've got the money. Yeah.
And they have, I mean, people like Nick Khan, Dana White. This is one of the conversations that I don't know, we've had it on the show or previously. People talk about the gate and the fact that there's, 1,000 people there, 300 people, whatever. Eddie says the shows are in Dana White's garage, which made somebody mentioned that yesterday on the broadcast. It did like a fake English accent. Right? It's in the garage. Anyway, they do have Paramount in the States. Paramount had 5 million viewers, I think, for the UFC. They had 1 million sign-ups just for Paramount Plus, just for that one UFC event. Sean O'Malley, I think, was the first. I'm not a UFC guy. Their first event, so they have that audience already. They also have Dana White, which is something that I'm sure he wouldn't. Not that he watches this anyway. Eddie wouldn't be pleased to hear. But like when DAZN went over to the States, they had Eddie Hearn, who was great big deal over here. But every casual sports fan in America knows who Dana White is. Every single one of them. Football, NFL fans, NBA fans, they all know who Dana White is. They all know the UFC.
Most over here do.
They do, well. Yeah, but you're talking about the big market. But yeah, it's exactly the same. And having that as your kind of, okay, they don't have 15, 20,000 banged out in Vegas last night for Jai Opetaia, but they've got X amount of hundreds of thousands watching on Paramount Plus. They've got Dana White.
The plan will be that they will have.
Sure. And if they, I mean, by all accounts, if you believe the numbers, they've got $100 million a year from Paramount. They've got, I think, a 5 or a 7 year deal there. So there's longevity to that. And they'll be looking at it, I'm sure. I mean, Nick Khan and people are obviously much more intelligent than I am, but looking at it in the sense of like, we've got time here. We've got the infrastructure. I'm quite sure if the plan is to make a company viable over 10, 15, 20 years, they've got the infrastructure, they've got the backing to do that. So if their plan is, and you saw Dana White last night in his post-fight press conference, said, look, I'm here to sign everybody. There's big rumours about Shakur Stevenson signing with Zuffa. There's big rumours about Alexander Usyk with Zuffa. Bam Rodriguez, your old mate, was very, very close to signing with Zuffa Boxing recently until Matchroom stepped in. The Conor Ben stuff, again, kind of depending on who or what you listen to, and some of the interviews that have been done lately by Eddie Hearn and Frank Smith, there's, I think it's fair to say, some questions and queries about what that deal actually looks like, if it is $15 million for one fight, or if it's maybe something misrepresented to kind of circumvent the matching.
I found that quite hard to believe that it would be $50 million for one fight, but I don't really.
It sounds like an outlier, even in the days of like the modern days of Saudi purses and inflated purses. It doesn't sound like something.
All those things that you've outlined there, they are the reason why they're not your typical newcomers.
No,
like we get newcomers in boxing who have arrived with lots of money, and not long afterwards are generally run screaming into the night, haven't they? Because they've had their pockets emptied. So they're not your typical newcomers. But you mentioned the time span there, but as you said, it is going to take time.
And like 100 mil, that's, let's just say
7 Conor Ben fights.
It's not even that when you pay the opponent, you know what I mean? Not even that. It's about his first year with them. If they pay all the opponents and they put him in some big fights, because he's earning 15 million from what we know and what we understand. And I think you're right. I think what's happened is Matchroom probably could have matched a multi-fight offer. They could have probably put a plan up to match a multi-fight offer. They've probably overpaid on this one fight just to break the sort of matching from the last contract, because obviously then this will be the most recent contract, and then they'll go from there, and it will stabilise and level out a little bit. But
you're fighting on Klarna for your next 3 fights.
Yeah. But in all seriousness, it's the way it inflates the market that, okay, just because you've got 41 bill doesn't mean you want to be doing 1.5 bill a year on boxing out your ass and losing it. Like, it doesn't mean you want to do that for what reason. And, I don't know all the ins and outs of the legal proceedings that seller, TKO, Zuffa, I'm not sure who it is that's actually facing them, but I don't know how many times Frank Warren's gone into a courtroom as the underdog. He knows the business, like the Bible of boxing that all the promoters in world boxing pretty much work from now. A core of that somewhere is a Frank Warren contract. Like he changed the way that world boxing did business. And, you know, when it comes to putting in little caveats when he's doing business dealings with powerful people and companies, you know, little exclusive comments here and there, and all of a sudden there's billions we're talking about, and Frank's got a piece of paper that says, you lot said that I'd be involved in this. And, you know, when words on paper has been signed and agreed between people, Frank understands what is getting written on there, so he wouldn't be in court if he didn't have a very strong case. And how damaging could that be? Would it just be would have to pay him off a certain amount? Would it be, this can't really go ahead in the way that you want it to without really big damages? Because it depends how tight and strong that contract and how much value that Frank Warren can insist that the time that the Saudis, etc., spent around shadowing and mirroring and watching what the ticket person does and what the hotel person does and what the security do and what the promoter does, and sort of learning off every single job across, like, putting that into a court case and sort of taking that as damages from a Hall of Fame promoter, one of the most famous men and successful men in boxing. You know, there's a lot of damages there, you'd think. And, like, I don't know, you have 41 billion and you might have a lot more billions on top of that, but do you just want to keep doing it out your arse? Or how long does it go? Let's just go back to what we know, MMA. Do you know what I mean?
It seems to be that the it's a good point, and this is one of the things that you've mentioned there, Andy. It's such like a fluid situation where, kind of like as you mentioned, like that week, it was not the week that we didn't do a podcast was probably the most newsworthy week in boxing history. There were so many different things that were flying out day in and day out, and things, the goalposts do seem to be moving so often. I guess from their perspective, from the Zuffa perspective, and again going on comments from Dana White, it's kind of similar to, we mentioned there, PBC. When they came in, it was like overpay. There was talk of a PBC belt, you know, not that long ago. The Zone came in, we're going to overpay, we're going to have everything on one thing. And from Dana White and Zuffa's perspective, that seems to be the route they're going. We're going to overpay, we're going to get all of the top talent. It's kind of the opposite of certain economics, where you corner the market, then raise the price. In their perspective, you corner the market, then drop the purses, because where else are you going to go? Like you mentioned earlier about MMA, you're not going to go to Pride or Bellator.
It doesn't mean the same.
Yeah, exactly. It's not the same thing. You don't have the visibility. You're not getting X amount of million people watching you on Paramount. You're not fighting for the Zuffa championship belt, which, you know, it may take 5, 10, 20 years for it to get any sort of kind of level of credibility. Going back to what you said earlier, and kind of we're going to try and pivot this back to Jai Opetaia. The IBF kind of didn't exactly cover themselves in glory, I think, in the last week. Dana White kind of made a comment about Mauricio Solomon, said that this guy is like the poster boy for everything that we're trying to do, in a sense of like he's basically making the argument with the way that he's acting and the comments that he's making for there not to be the recognition of these other sanctioning bodies. The IBF, Daryl Peoples, I mean, depending on kind of, it's very difficult at the minute because there's a lot of, you know, how do we put this in a polite way? There's a lot of agenda-driven news that's kind of popping out at the minute with various different people across the sport. Very interesting time for journalism in boxing, as it always is. But if you take, I mean, Mike Coppinger, who works for The Ring, of course, owned by the same entity, said that he received an email from Daryl Peoples. By all accounts, again, going based on the news that's out there, Jai Opetaia paid his sanctioning fees, $80,000. Everything was kind of agreed. The IBF belt would be on the line, as well as the Zuffa belt. And then
surely not paid them. Agreed.
Apparently, he paid them.
Yeah, but when do you pay? I don't know anyone that's ever paid sanctioning.
But again, like
this, that's not happened yet.
But again, this is the thing. Like, how
it's not happened yet.
But again, like, how do you know? Like, the words paid, he'd paid them.
But it might mean he would.
Okay,
agreed to.
Let's say he agreed.
I just don't know anyone that's ever got in the ring for a title and then they pay before.
No, for sure.
You pay after you fought.
The way that it's been represented, okay, even if it's paid up, the deduction, everything was kind of agreed. Yeah, but according to Mike Coppinger, he received an email from Daryl Peoples, of course, head of the IBF, and said that he felt disrespected by the IBF title being secondary to the Zuffa belt, and there wasn't an agreement apparently when the fight was made that the Zuffa belt would be on the line. Apparently the IBF need to make a you need to have it sanctioned for the IBF title. You have to agree that it's going to be on the line with either the IBO, for example.
Yeah, like the unification.
Yeah,
they won't recognise the
because they have different rules.
No, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So
different rules, etc.
That was kind of what it was originally made out at. and then there'd been an agreement. But then, according to Mike Coppinger, he received an email from Daryl Peoples and said he wasn't happy with the disrespect that was shown to the IBF title in the build-up. And, you know, we've seen from the broadcast, it's very much Zuffa belt, Ring Magazine belt. I mean, Max Kellerman after the fight called Jai Opetaia the undisputed champion because you've got the Zuffa belt and the Ring belt. And Jai Opetaia was like, well, Zurdo's got 2 of the other belts, I want them. And it's like, oh, this is a bit awkward, guys. But again, it's kind of that peek, it's not even peeking behind the curtain because it's very much out there and in front of everybody's eyes, where you've got somebody from the IBF stepping in and go, no, we don't want that now. We're going to pull that away. And they're in very much open conflict. But again, on the Zuffa side of things, they go from, we don't want to recognise the IBF, we don't want to recognise any of these other sanctioning bodies, I don't want to work with any of them, going, well, now they're taking the title away. We wanted the title on the line. It's kind of, where is it?
Well, this is what I mean. Is like it's that's the kind of psychology of it almost, which is really interesting. It's kind of like high level game theory almost, and negotiation. What is it that people really want? And that can be a very difficult thing to work out when you're dealing with skilled operators, and they do seem to and fro on that. But they seemed happy to have the IBF, and then when the IBF pulled out, the script changes. That's what I'm finding really interesting about the whole thing. Watching it from afar is fascinating. I mean, it really is, and we'll see where they've got to by the end of the year, because they keep saying, you know, judge us by the end of the year. There's big things coming. Quite a lot of big things have already happened, but in terms of the shows they put on, they've done those 4 shows. And let's just put to one side the gate and the venue and all the rest of it. The cards have been good. They've been good to watch.
Show last night was fantastic.
They've not been ram-packed full of big names, but at the same time, they didn't say that they would be early on. What they did say was that they would be good fights to watch. And they have been good fights to watch.
Yeah, and that's kind of, again, going back to what we were saying earlier. They haven't gone out there and made this big song and dance of we're going to be doing this and we're going to be making this, like, kind of, again, similar to DAZN and Eddie Hearn, because I don't feel like they really feel like they need to. They already have the awareness in the public space in America. Yeah. They already have Dana White. They already have Paramount. They're like, we're going to start, we're going to do this.
Had a decent enough footprint. Well, he had a footprint in the US because he'd done those HBO cards, hadn't he? A few, so people kind of knew, but I don't think he had a lot of choice, to be honest, other than to do it the way he did it. And it was quite Hearn, wasn't it? It's quite bombastic, you know, and that's the kind of guy he is. But he's not an idiot. Like he knew that by doing that there were risks attached to it, but in order to make some noise, I don't think there was anything else he really could do. If he were to have his time again, I think he would still feel that he had to do it that way, maybe slightly differently. There might be a few details where maybe hindsight, you pick not Adrian Broner, for example, somebody who's maybe
an email, keep that one on the phone call.
Completely, exactly, things like that. Yeah, things like that. But like you say, they don't really need to do that because everybody already knows who they are. So it's different, isn't it? It's different.
It is very different. But yeah, again, kind of what you said there about the shows. The show last night was fantastic. And like, you know, if you're a gambling man, like I can be.
You are, yeah.
Yeah, very much. Shout out Betfred. Gamble responsibly, but gamble with Betfred. Then you look at the card, and all of a sudden, rather than kind of what I'm accustomed to seeing or what bettors are accustomed to seeing on a weekend, rather than a load of 25-1 on shots or 50-1 on shots, you've got basically 50-50, 60-40 fights right the way down the card. I mean, the main event was heavily betted or heavily weighted into Jai Opetaia's favour, but the rest of the card was really well matched. The action fights, they're put together really nicely. The matchmaking over on those Zuffa cards has been fantastic. And like, if you've got the visibility, and we're all boxing fans before anything, fighter before a fan, but we're all boxing fans. We want to watch good fights. Like, we would much rather shows that are 50-50 all the way down, and that's got a much better chance of pulling in a casual audience if they're going to flick over from whatever, like over here, the football, or, you know, oh, this is a brilliant fight, you're engaged, and bang, straight away. Like, I mean, one of the best fights I've seen in a long time was Joe Laws against Stevie McKenna, which was that was on the back of a football match. And I think watching that as like a casual football fan, you watch that, okay, it's not the highest level of boxing that anybody's ever seen.
It's entertaining.
Exactly. And that's kind of the route that they're going. And that, I mean, don't be wrong, like, not every fight has been been like that and not every card has been like that. But if you have that kind of ethos and you've got the ability to put those shows on regularly and get seen by a lot of people, then you're more than halfway there.
And I don't think boxing promotion and the selling of its events, I don't think it's really a rocket science. I think you put some names on that people have heard before. You put well-matched fights with some sort of geographical consistency to the fights where possible, and then all of a sudden you've got a sold-out arena. It doesn't actually take that much. You put on some actually well-matched fights and two lads from the same sort of city or same area, or you're doing it a different way. You're trying to do like, you know, a UK side of the card versus a US side of the card, or not, just something with some sort of geographical common sense attached to it. And the shows will usually sell quite well. I think we've seen it. The problem is when there's such a scramble for arenas, like, I think one of the biggest mistakes that Boxer made was they had all these fighters and then they was putting fighters in the wrong cities constantly and fights in the wrong city. And it's like, you've got a good fight that would have done double, triple potentially the tickets in a different city. But because you'd already paid the deposit and needed to get them out because of contract agreements, you put like Lawrence Coley in like Birmingham or Manchester or something like well, he's not going to sell there. You know what I mean? You put him down south against maybe another fighter from London, you got a sold out arena. I've seen it with him.
Chamberlain fight.
100%, and that was way ages ago before, you know, at a British level or whatever it was.
10 fights, less than 10 fights.
Exactly. So it's usually that needs to be worked on, I think. And we've seen, you know, over the last maybe 10 years of boxing, examples of when it gets done well, the shows are great, even if they aren't always completely littered with superstars or the biggest and the most expensive fights. You put on good fights, well matched, competitive, with some geographical consistency between the reason as to why the match is going on, and yeah, I think usually everything else falls in place and they get in the ring and they're good fights. But the moment you're putting, I don't know, a Kazakh versus a Russian in the middle of LA or something, it's like, not that many people are going to be interested. You put a local fighter from there who's got a bit of reputation and put him against another name built up somewhere else or from a similar place, and then, you know, it's dragging people on like on a social aspect. Oh, you're going to the fight, we know both those guys, you're going to go, and it drags the bigger crowds and people, that the fans that don't want to miss what's seemingly like the best thing that's happening in the area that night. And yeah, I think the more they focus on that, then our problem with the half empty crowds, etc., that will be gone quicker. And then the moment that fighters are fighting in front of 20,000 people, then all of a sudden, okay, then there is no arguments about their events. But yeah, it's like they're prioritising the sort of 50-50 fights than fights that make any sort of geographical sense right now. They're just putting fights anywhere. It seems like to me, I might be wrong, but
it seems like I feel like they're just
you
prioritising the TV product rather than
like the like Sundays in Las Vegas. At what point is it not going to be on a Sunday in Las Vegas, like you say? At what point is it going to go somewhere else? And everything you described there, what always entertains me about that is that people would describe that, some people, quite a lot of people, they say, well, that's, you know, that's kind of like old school promotion.
Old fashioned.
It's just good promotion.
Yeah, exactly.
Makes
it's
the most
It's a reason why people
it's common sense.
If you're
good
making
promotion.
fans travel 1,000 miles to watch their fighter constantly, well,
exactly.
The way I look at it is every single extra mile, every single extra 5 minutes that you have to travel, 1% of the fans are not coming now.
Yeah.
A percent can't afford the hotel or can't go the hour.
To go, exactly.
You know what I mean? And bit by bit, it becomes more comfortable to just be like, well, I'm going to stay and watch this one at home.
I'm sure you say this to all of your fighters, but it's with social media and digital the last 10, 15 years, fighters are kind of, because you do potentially have this global reach, everybody's obsessed with going global, but just if you can sell out your local arena, sell out your local
strong
arena,
foundation,
because then you can say to a promoter, I don't have 1 million Twitter followers, but I sold that place out and it fits 1,000 for my last fight. Can he do that? Because the chances are he probably can't. And that's what makes you marketable first and foremost, because it is about getting people through the gate, because that atmosphere comes through the screen on TV, and you know, people buy into it. You know, it looks like something you want to watch.
And the business of boxing for me is quite simple. If you fight, it don't matter how competitive, how high level, how good the fight is. If you fight and no one cares enough to book a hotel and travel to it, and that is the case, then there's not actually that many people watching at home as much as we have 100 million subscribers, but how many are staying up till 3 o'clock in the morning to watch Jai Opetaia punch the head off Glanton? Do you know what I mean? It's not gonna, like, if only 1,000 people out of the whole world that could get there and travel there. Look, we've seen people travel in massive numbers when it's something they really want to go to. But if they're putting on a show and only 1,000 people want to turn up, that is giving some sort. Now there's the us's, you know, the attached to boxing, will watch and digest every bit of content that sort of comes through. But outside of that, where are we moving the needle? Because moving the needle just in the boxing world, it doesn't work for boxing. Anytime they put a lot of money in, it has to move the needle of sport globally. And we have the potential to do that. But when there's an event with 1,000 people in it, that's not moving the needle globally, not one bit. Not even a slight inch. For boxing people that are going to be the ones clipping it up, us now sat talking about it, putting a bit more out, yeah, it moves the needle a little bit for us. But outside of the, you know, with our boxing glasses on, boxing is one of how many sports in the world? And it's a fringe sport, let's face it. There's been, especially on this side of the world, an almost government level, almost a government level pressure on trying to make boxing fail over the last 50, 60 years. From when it was in the schools, to the point of they tried banning it every time something bad happened, to the point of all the terrestrial TVs are pulled away, having a little dabble again now, but only because boxing won't go anywhere. Because it was still, even after quiet periods, re-emerge as one of the most exciting sports in the world. And, you know, if we're just talking to boxing sort of hardcore purists, then they're going to be able to tell you everything about Zuffa and everything about what's going on right now. But
ultimately,
outside,
we don't really matter.
Yeah, no. Because in boxing we matter, but we don't matter.
We're going to be there come what may.
It needs to be the people. I need to be able to walk to the shop and hear people talking about Jai Opetaia.
But I think that's why
I need to be in the pub.
We all know, don't we, when a fight's crossed over, because
your nan will ask you about it.
Taxi driver.
Yeah, exactly. It sounds like the taxi driver cliche, but it's true. You know, it's like, how many WhatsApps do you get from mates who, you know, will tune in for a big fight? And if they start coming during fight week, then you know that it's a big fight. And if they don't, then you know that we might have decided it is. But actually, and particularly when you're in a fight week, everything feels big, but you don't know how it looks from the outside. And that's
outside of the stuff with the IBF belt, this is genuinely first conversation I've had about a Jai Opetaia fight.
Yeah. I mean, it's always one from...
Have they got anything in slated? What's their next date? Because what I'm curious about
they've got a date at the end of April, 23rd of April.
I'm really curious to see, like, when are they going to take it away from Sundays in Las Vegas? Because they've done these 4 events in pretty rapid succession, really. They've as I said, it's like getting the train on the tracks, and it's not like they've all been test events, but to an extent they have.
They kind of have, but again, it's kind of
new, isn't it?
I was about to say it before, where it's like you've got like the Zuffa train, which is building up steam, and this is kind of the long play. And in the meantime, they've got these big Ring magazine cards, and you've got Fury Makhmudov, Canelo Crawford.
Are they counting as Zuffa? Are we?
No, they're not. They don't count as Zuffa. But again, I mean, we're still waiting to hear and waiting to see who's going to be the lead promoter for Fury Makhmudov. Depending on who you listen to, that's a Zuffa card.
Well, it has to be by contract for Conor if you hear.
Exactly. So so it's kind of like it's all, and again, it's why it's kind of it's all so convoluted at the minute, where it's kind of like drawing the distinction, and I guess that kind of fluidity that we spoke about earlier is sort of there. Where they're like, well, we've got the Zuffa cards, we've also got the Ring cards, and we've got the Riyadh season events, and we've got it's all a bit.
Do you think they've overlooked the resistance? I know they was expecting
People always do.
some, but when you're gonna have, you know. Well, straight away, look, the 2 rival promoters of, you know, my lifetime of looking at professional sport, Frank and Eddie, they're now mates. It's like a coalition. It's like, you know for a fact that Queensbury and Matchroom are looking at, this is us versus them right now. They're not, and they was against Boxer, it looked like, the way publicly it seemed, and, you know, they're all on the zone now. They don't really want to step on each other's toes too much and upset the apple cart. And they also want to band together and make it as hard for Zuffa and all that involvement to do anything. And when you have some really, really smart, successful people in boxing like Frank Warren, like Eddie Hearn, pooling their resources together to sort of protect what they sort of know as boxing beforehand, like, that's a lot of resistance just from them two, you know, standout people in boxing. But then we're looking at the IBF, WBC, and their reaction to
Top Rank and Al Heyman and people from
it's literally like they've pulled everyone together, especially those on DAZN, like, because that's sort of like the other sort of network. Zuffa gets Sky in the UK. That will be a big move if they bring Conor Benn there, but you know, they've signed him and they're putting him on the other show, which is on Netflix. So it is just a bit all over the place at the moment. Where
it really is.
But because they own,
in 12 months,
it's great.
Because the same pot of money practically owns like 4 or 5 different entities, and they're all sort of working in the same direction. It makes up for it in certain ways, but there's only a certain amount of actual public figures. You know, Dana, Turki Al-Sheikh. There's a certain amount of them, but then there's a lot more on sort of the alliance of the opposition, which is, you know, the boxing world as we know it. And it looks like they're all harmonising and working around each other, you know, not matching each other's dates, not really going after each other's fighters too much. Or, you know, when was the last surprising Queensberry to match them or vice versa? We used to have them, you know what I mean? They used to go quiet a little bit and all of a sudden a fight has been stolen. But we used to have them. Now we don't so much.
Yeah.
And it's probably due to the more harmonic relationship where if a fighter is trying to sort of see if anything's about, one of the promoters probably brings up the other promoter and going, hey, are you still working with Mark? We won't work with him then. And, you know, the more that happens, the stronger the sort of SmackDown versus Raw. That's how I see Matchroom and Queensberry. And it's going to take a lot, I think, to sort of push off that pedestal of where they are in British boxing, and I think it's going to cost Zuffa so much that I don't even know if it's even worth it. Like, where's all that money going to do? Just pay the inflated purses of all of these fighters in the last however many years of their career, because they're going to need the headliners. They're going to obviously build up some fighters as well, but they're going to need the headliners. So in order to get them off someone that's already got them, because they're headliners, so they're sought after, it's going to cost them so much every single time. And I just struggle to see. I just struggle to see how they're going to do it. But I think this is a conversation we could just keep doing circles on for.
Yeah, we're going to have to move on. We've done a good chunk there. We've been waiting to do this for a little while, haven't we? Like to get into the minutiae of.
It's so interesting.
But it's good for boxers. That's one thing I'll say. While speaking with all them hats on, this stuff makes it a boxer market. And as a ex-boxer and as a manager, we love this, because when it's a promoter's market.
Yeah.
You know, you go with him, or if you don't go with him, maybe you go with him if there's no one else.
I do think it's good all round as well. You know, it's like you say, if the Zuffa Sky things gets over the line, then boxing with MVP as well, and who knows, maybe some other stuff, that's back on Sky. Like in the UK, it's important. It's important
we need boxing on Sky.
MVP have done a deal
very
with
ESPN.
Yeah. MVP have done a deal with ESPN. So there's going to be boxing back on ESPN. Hopefully there'll be more boxing back on ESPN. Again, matters, you know, visibility-wise. And the more people in our game broadcasting, covering boxing, the better. I've always said, you know, a monopoly is no good.
Yeah, and it's
anyone.
never worked.
For the boxers, but sometimes for the building of stars, though, there just being sort of one place you can watch boxing is definitely better.
Yeah, of course.
The fact that we have to keep up, keep up with boxing properly.
That ship sailed so long ago.
But to keep up with boxing properly is half a full-time job. Just to have watched 50% of the going on.
But we're not alone in that.
You have to have DAZN, you have to have Sky, you have to have all these different.
But football's on
that's the world.
Football's on a lot of the main broadcasters.
Yeah,
it's not.
That's the world now, though. Since
right,
digital.
We're going to have to move on. Before we do, we were going to talk about a couple of fantasy fights. So let's just start on this fantasy fight first. Sonny, going to come to you first. Dana White versus Eddie Hearn over 6 rounds. How's it go?
Eddie Hearn all day long. Not just because he's my gaffer, but because he's got the reach, the range, you know what I mean? He had a few fights when he was younger as well.
Yeah, allegedly.
He had a few fights when he was younger.
Show me the footage.
He had a few fights. Nice long jab. Eddie's younger, isn't he? Eddie's younger than Dana, isn't he?
Yeah. Yeah, I think he's about 10, 12 years younger.
Yeah, a lot taller than him as well.
But
he's 45, Eddie, isn't he? He's a bit younger
Dana
than
White's
me.
50.
And Eddie over the last few years, has been getting in good shape. He trains up very hard. Eddie does. Trains very hard.
Andy, the boxing breakdowns that matter.
It would be, I think stylistically, obviously, yeah, Hearn, height, potentially the reach that comes with that height. Does he really box his height? Hard to know because we don't have the footage.
Need the
don't
footage.
have the
Eddie
evidence
Hills, the
for
Iceman.
Dana White, I think, could probably be pretty careless with his head on the inside.
Some of that rough house UFC.
I think so, yeah.
From the streets of Boston.
But who promotes the show, though?
That. Well,
Turkey.
these are the things.
Got to be Turkey show, isn't it? Got to be a Turkey card.
You'd think so.
You put it with John Fury against Carl Froch on the undercard. Big event.
Imagine.
Is that the second fantasy fight?
No, that's not even the second fantasy fight. Right, enough actual fantasy. And before we move on and talk about this weekend, we're running out of time, as we always do. Replaced Barry with the only person in the media who speaks more than him. We're going to talk about a fight that has been announced. We mentioned earlier, May the 2nd, Gilberto Zurdo Ramirez against David Benavidez. Another fight that's been announced for that date. Sonny, going to come to you. The biggest fight in Japanese boxing history. Naoya Inoue against Junto Nakatani for the undisputed super bantamweight titles. What a fight.
Crazy fight, to be honest. Two fighters that I've spent a very, very, very long time looking at. They were both flyweights at once upon a time.
You and Nakatani both had belts at the same time
Yep.
at flyweight. Yeah. Nakatani ducked Sonny Edwards, just getting that on there.
Do you know what? In all seriousness, I would have fought him because I was ranked well with the WBO. I would have fought him, but he was my least favourite choice of opponent because
why is that?
He's very good.
But I mean, from like a technical, because I don't know, you would have looked at that from an analytical perspective, like stylistically. He was very good. He can box. He's rangy. He's sharp, and he's spiteful. Sort of all the ingredients that you need to make a good fighter. And at the time he weren't really well known, so it was going to be like a really hard fight for someone I knew was really good, and he weren't built up that much compared to what he is now. Obviously Inoue, it's very hard to ever bet against him, but Nakatani has sort of been the next Inoue at the lighter weight for, as long as Inoue's been Inoue, and he has been every bit as sort of dominant in all the fights that I've seen. I think he had maybe one or two had a hard fight last time. It was Sebastian Hernandez, his first fight at super bantamweight, very close fight. I actually had Hernandez nicking that.
Yeah, and that's what I was going to say, that when he left sort of like super fly and gone up, I haven't actually seen that fight. But I know that he, is coming down. But obviously the size goes up, and the opposition levels probably go up a little bit as well with that. And I wouldn't pick him to beat Inoue, but that's probably because I don't think you could really pick anyone to beat him. You can give someone a chance that they could do something, but he's like, who could you pick to beat Usyk? I think it's that same sort of conversation, and a tremendous fight. And I'm glad that it's going down as a massive fight. You said the biggest fight in Japanese history, so fair play. I love seeing the lower generation, sort of the lower weight division, get the spotlight. And tremendous fight. If you're not too clued up about that one, make sure you watch it, because that's like like watching Dragon Ball Z. Just very, very, very like action, fast paced, control of everything they're doing, tough, aggressive. Like that's gonna be one of them sort of back and forward Goku Vegeta type fights. Just combinations, hurtful shots, like constant action. I think that fight is going to have. And going on to the other one, Benavidez Ramirez, I think another fantastic fight. I think I'm not sure if I just want Benavidez to win or I think he's going to win, but I do rate Benavidez how he lets his hands go so quick. Zurdo obviously a bit bigger, but they're both coming up from a sort of similar-ish weight to go up to cruiserweight now, and I don't think either of them are big enough for Jai Opetaia, to be honest. But I think that's a tremendous fight. I think Benavidez's hands how quickly he can let him go and sort of keep up the volume throughout the fight as well. I think that's going to be the difference in that fight. I think Zurdo's good, obviously, but I think he's just had a longer career of sort of, I don't want to use the word protected and it seemed like a really bad thing, but just hasn't really been let off the leash until maybe the last few years as much as maybe he needed to, where Benavidez had a few more just consistent fighting at a high level, I think. And he looked very good against Yard, I thought. Very good.
Just on Inoue Nakatani, there seems to be this kind of thought process that maybe certainly not past his best, I think is certainly not what people are saying, but maybe Inoue not in his absolute prime anymore. Maybe just kind of, I think somebody made a good kind of suggestion, kind of the Roy Jones of like 2001, like where he's like still Roy Jones, but he's just maybe just a little bit. Do you agree with that, or do you still feel that he's kind of feel like he's definitely developed his style over the years? Maybe with the additional weight, he's he's been dropped a couple of times, which has kind of refined him. He's become more of the Inoue master boxer than the Inoue who was blowing guys out in a round or two.
I think the weight has definitely been a big reason. I think as he's fighting, he's naturally bigger and stronger. World level guys, I think his powers definitely come with him, but I think obviously before he would just throw like a 1-2 left hook, not really loaded up, and his opponent's in a heap on the floor, and it was almost that simple and easy for him. And I think I first saw it in the Donaire fight, when there seemed to be like a couple of little chinks, but obviously Donaire's a world level puncher, even though he's a lot older, he's bigger, but he can still genuinely hurt you. But I think the weight has come with that, and I think because he was always just setting about his work and just finding his feet and letting his hands go, he was putting himself in vulnerable positions a hell of a lot, even though he weren't being made to punish a lot of the time, because he has such good decision making and range. He was getting in a place where he is vulnerable because he's in range, but then he's landing the shot straight away, and I think that's kept him safe for a lot of the time, because his punches are heavy, sharp and fast enough where he's not really giving his opponent much time to react without just gambling, and they don't really want to gamble openly with him. So, but any fighter that can sort of get under pressure and sort of fire back to him while he's standing there, he is going to be there. And as he's gone up the weights, I think he's felt the weight a little bit. But with Nakatani, that matchup has Inoue, as you'd argue, the longer, heavier guy, the probably stronger, the probably heavier handed, etc. So maybe in some of the matches, certain attributes weren't as dominant as what he's used to having in other matchups. So it's caused him a couple of things to come over, getting caught with like a clean shot that's a bit heavier than what he's used to, etc. But I think with Nakatani, it will be Nakatani trying to beat him with matching his sort of speed, and then a fight of moments really about who sort of lands clean, because you think both of them can be hurt. Like neither of them are like just absolute animals where they sort of just walk through absolutely everything. But they're both very, very dangerous with their hands and very quick with their hands as well. And often if someone stood in front of them in the wrong place for more than a couple of seconds, they've let 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 punches go. So I do favour Inoue, even though, he's probably not... How old is he now? About 32?
He's 31, 32.
31, 32, yeah. I was thinking he's a couple of years older than me. So, he's getting to a stage at the lighter weights where you do... peak a bit earlier than at the heavyweights, because it is a weight division that's usually ruled by reactions, engine, conditioning, and being able to control and keep your body fresh enough over a hard career. The moment your ankle starts hurting, your knee starts hurting, your back starts aching, that all starts slowing you down. At heavyweight, you don't feel the difference straight away, and it's not as obvious. But at the lighter weights, when you're looking at the sort of prime of how fast they can throw punches and react to things, the moment that's slightly tweaked down, just a notch, it can make a big difference in your overall performances. And, the fights typically go longer rounds consistently, so you normally have to see, more of things, whereas heavyweight, fighters can get through certain levels or certain stages of their career by just going to try and knocking them out in a few rounds, and if it works, it works. If not, then they might lose down the stretch. But they rolled the dice on the try to look at Derek Chisora. He comes out until he goes flat and then keeps fighting. Do you know what I mean? If he gets him out in that time, then he's won. If not, then it's going to be a hard night for him.
Andy, love an away day. Inoue versus Nakatani,
That'd be
Tokyo
great.
Dome. Does that do anything for you?
Yeah, absolutely. It'd be absolutely fantastic. I've never been to Japan for boxing, and yeah, as you say, the day will never dawn where I don't want to go to a new place to watch fights, and that'd be a brilliant one to go and watch. I mean, with regard to what Sonny was talking about there, and what you the point you floated as to whether he's past his best or has maybe plateaued and slightly going downhill physically at the age he is, and for the reasons that Sonny outlined, he will have peaked, and therefore he is now going down the other side of the hill. But it doesn't mean that he's going down at a rapid rate. It doesn't mean that he's shot or he's finished, because as soon as you say something like that, people just exaggerate it and suggest that you're saying exactly that he's a busted flush. He's not. But realistically, if you're clean, then past the age of 30, particularly at the lower weights, you are going down the other side of the hill. Your reflexes aren't getting better.
He'll be 33 next month.
Yeah,
so
there you go. He's looked after
fight.
himself, clearly. There's never been any suggestion that he's anything other than a clean athlete that I'm aware of. And so, therefore, that will be what is happening. And it's just that really tough thing for professional athletes in all sports, but particularly boxing, is that your physical peak does come early, and you need to try and marry that physical peak with as much kind of maturity and know-how as you can. You want those Venn diagrams to overlap for as long as possible,
and awareness as well.
That's it.
The problem is
difficult thing to do.
You get all the way to the end of your career, and
you
now,
know so much, but
now
you can't do it.
Yeah, and now everyone knows who you are as well. So it's the biggest fights are out there, the biggest events, but you don't always necessarily have the body that you once had. The reasons why you got there, you don't necessarily have all of those.
That's the difficult
functions, and then you're fighting, in comparison to your old self, but obviously, you're not firing at the same cylinders that you was, and it's hard to find that balance. A lot of time it's timing for fighters that goes wrong rather than anything particularly, else.
Yeah, and it's the great fighters. I mean, kind of Mayweather's the obvious example. Bernard Hopkins, another obvious example of kind of fighters with that longevity who were still able to achieve and win big fights and be in big spectacles after their physical peaks. Like Mayweather, never really a welterweight, even though he kind of grew into it eventually. Obviously had a couple of fights at 54, never fought natural 54-pounder, but, as he kind of went through the weights and, he had hand injuries and things like that, he wasn't the same physical specimen he was at 130 and 135, where he was able to kind of use his athleticism, his speed and his power a lot more. But he countered that, as did Hopkins, by what they'd learned and how they kind of refined their style. And I feel like in a way is
no pun intended.
Yeah, is kind of doing the same and has done the same. I think he's become more of a well-rounded fighter. I think a dig on the chin from Luis Nery and Ramon Cardenas has probably given him a little bit of maybe we can't do that like we used to do at Superfly or even at Bantamweight, as he has previously. Just sticking on the fight, Andy, I think it's probably fair to say that before Nakatani's last fight, it was considered to be a much more, I wouldn't say 50-50 fight, because Inoue is still Inoue, but it feels as though his first fight at 122 pounds, Nakatani obviously not going, he got the win, but in a very, very close fight that a lot of people could have seen either way. It does feel like Inoue is now a much stronger favourite than he was, even if that fight was floated 6-12 months ago. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, it does feel like that. And that's, that might prove to be incorrect, because it depends what he's taken from that first fight at the weight, really. He might not feel comfortable. It might not sit well with him, or he might come away from it thinking he needs to tweak preparations, and that there were some things that maybe he didn't get right and didn't do right that first time around that he needs to do differently. There's all sorts of things that could have happened there. They're not raised in a school where you generally come out with excuses after the event. That's just not, it's not something you do. So you'll never really know if there were things going on behind the scenes, whereas some fighters are happy to say, look, I wasn't at my best, but that's because this or that, or they'll just subtly kind of push it out there. I'm not making excuses, but that's the classic ploy. So who knows on that front? And that might
stylistically as well.
Yeah.
You
it's
can
a
imagine
completely different
Hernandez
fight.
is and
completely different.
look at like we go back to like the Lomachenko Salido fight all them years ago. Lomachenko was clearly the better fighter, but with just a certain variables, coming in overweight, second ever, long distance fight, and just sort of got roughed up by a ref that was sort of letting him get away with really all of it. All of a sudden, you just highlight Lomachenko from that performance, and it's sad as a boxing fan that remembers Lomachenko as probably the best amateur that's ever existed. 396 wins and only one loss, and you beat him as well. The guy that beat you, like, won Olympics, worlds, everything. Like, that is actually unheard of. But now, because he turned over quite late and tried to sort of play catch up on his time, he gets really disrespected in my opinion with the general consensus of casual, think they're not casual boxing fans, if that makes sense. Like, he's really talked down on. Now, we have the same in this conversation that Nakatani jumped up again to what super bantamweight now and fighting obviously a good level fighter at a weight that's heavier, and that's going to come and sort of fight him in a different way perhaps than other people have. And now his odds of this fight will have dramatically changed in the minds of people because of that one fight where, like you said, if that fight didn't happen, you would have had him more of a chance before. Now, stylistically, he probably prefers this matchup, more a typical Japanese style of fighting rather than what Hernandez Mexican sounds. Yeah. So you understand, like, Nakatani's become the best out of being from Japan. So he's been used to fighting fighters that have that same sort of quick feet, aggressive but calculated, trying to hurt you, bust you down, box you at the same time. Like, that sort of style. Inoue and Nakatani are quite similar. So, the age of Nakatani is definitely younger, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
The freshness might be something that sort of starts balancing it. Like, I would always favour Inoue, but I think with the variables for both of them, it's like you're putting them against sort of as close to a world level mirror image of each other without being obviously perfect, where typically they're fighting more rugged people or maybe less well-rounded, more good at certain things to get to the level they've got to. And yeah, I think it's a very, very interesting matchup, but I just don't think you can pick anyone against Inoue, really. Even, my favourite fighter, Bam, I think if they were to fight, you'd still have to favour Inoue right now, even though you'd make every argument in the world that Bam's got every bit of chance to make it not only competitive but win the fight. But it's hard to pick against the pound for pound, arguably number one, arguably number two, maybe three if you want to be as harsh as possible, but I don't think you could put him any lower than that.
Andy, before we move on, how does that fight end in your opinion? How do you see it, Inoue versus Nakatani?
I think points. But I think fairly clear because, like you say, logically, if you pick against Inoue, you're going on some kind of gut feel, trying to be a bit contrary, taking a bit of a flyer, and that's fine. People like to do that, but it doesn't really stack up to me. It doesn't really add up.
Okay, right, we've talked far too long, and we've got about 15 minutes to talk about this weekend's boxing in Ireland, Sonny, of course, where you will be for Jazza Dickens versus Anto Cacace. I think if we would have said, maybe 5 years ago, that this was going to be a headliner for a world title and, genuine, like the winner of this fight, I think Navarrete separated himself from the crowd at 130 pounds, but the winner of this fight is in that top 2, top 3 bracket in the weight class, you would think. It would have been difficult to find that. But we are here. Boxing obviously has these wonderful ways of pulling these fights together. How do you see it playing out, Jazza Dickens and Anto Cacace?
Great fight, but, Bobbi Flood.
We'll come on to Bobbi Flood. We'll come on. The manager, Sonny Edwards.
Sorry, you just said 15 minutes, so I need to get my points in. In all seriousness, Cacace I rate very highly. Knew of him from sort of like the amateurs, etc. But for me, when he beat Sam Bowen in the fashion that he did, and Sam Bowen to me was one of those good amateurs that was made for pros. Do you know what I mean? He was tough, strong, could knock people out, would fight, keep going. And Cacace scored him. From what I can remember that fight, Cacace pinged him, pieced him up really, and really impressed me. Since then, he's gone on to beat like Lee Wood, he's beat Joe Cordina, etc., and he's looked fantastic doing it. I think I don't really think he's been offbeat from what I can remember any fight that I've seen him on. I don't think he's even had a really close one. from what I can remember quickly off the top of my head. Now Jazza's a fighter that, you know, has come the longest of routes. A very, very good guy, clean-hearted guy, a man of God. Was on, you know, the England and Team GB all them ways back, and never really sort of caught fire in the pros. Had a couple of good opportunities, maybe fell short, got to finals, even won at times in fights. But do you know what I think has happened with Jazza? I think he's put himself in an environment. He spends a lot of time in Dubai now. He's training with the trainer who actually did the corner for my debut, Jai Opetaia, who fought as a pro Sergio Martinez, David Lemayo, as well as some other good fighters. And he is like a, you know, Eastern Bloc, Soviet style, you know, no blowing no smoke up your ass, constantly repeating the same things until you get it right, and then even then just like a little nod of approval. I think Jazza, since teaming up with him, has generally found not only a great boxing brain but a great approach that sort of matches who he is as a person, you know, being very dedicated, very on it, very you know, hard working but not constant like reward searching, if that makes sense. And I think they've done a fantastic job. I think he's learned from all of his experience. I think he's in better condition, and he's sort of like really developed and filled out his maturity. We saw in the Zuffa Barrett fight, he looked way physically more impressive than Zuffa. It looked like anything that Zuffa and caught him with was just sort of flicking off him, bouncing off him. Like he looked really, really good. Then when he went and won the was it the IBA? He was
a WBA regular. He beat Albert
WBA regular.
We were over in Istanbul, didn't he?
Yeah, but he wasn't supposed to.
No.
You know,
Olympic gold medalist Batagaziev unbeaten.
That's what I mean. He wasn't supposed to go and do that, and he's done that now, and he's sort of been given this sort of twilight. Not given. He's broke down the doors when no one was giving it to him and gone and got them. So really, really happy for him. But I think it's a fantastic fight. I think it's a good show. Also, you got Maxi Hughes and Pierce O'Leary. Obviously, it was meant to be Mark Chamberlain, which was a mouthful. We were a fight by spectacle at first, but now it's got a slightly different feel to it because we saw Liam Dillon ride the ring and survive at times when he needed to, and tough it out with Pierce O'Leary in a fight that on paper I thought was a mismatch. I thought it was one of those fights that, that's a bit out of order that anyone's letting that sort of happen just on paper because of the weights, etc. Liam Dillon losing at certain levels and Pierce being such a big, dangerous puncher, and it didn't really play out the way anyone really, in my opinion, expected it to. And now he's got Maxi Hughes, who on his day is an absolute nightmare. An absolute nightmare, really hard to hit if he gets his tactics right. And he was up against it really in his last fight when he was over in Dubai, but his trainer Sean had a heart attack that day, so he was in a different corner.
That was a close fight as well.
And it was still a close fight.
The corner?
No, I wasn't in the corner, but I was shouting.
Where we were Deontay Wilder having a
I was sat in the princess seat,
literally almost in the corner, almost in Maxi Hughes' corner, me and Big Ron, and we felt that was close. I thought that was a really close fight going into the final couple of rounds.
But you know what, it's mad because from around about 7 or 8, it started getting a bit hard to watch for Maxi. Like I thought he was just half getting. Nothing was really heavy. No, but it was just like a constant barrage of like but.
He's got that nice.
And it just keeps.
I felt he had a lead at halfway. I thought he clearly had a lead at halfway, and then that happened, and then he dug in the last couple of rounds, and I just thought one judge had it a draw, and the other two were 7-5 and 8-4, and it was.
And he was a good fighter.
He's still got plenty.
Yeah.
But it's exactly like you say. The circumstances were. It was kind of strange just to see Sean not there, and you're kind of double taking and thinking, well, where is he? And I can't really just tap someone on the shoulder and ask them because they're about to go to work. Yeah. And you knew that something had happened. But
it was all trying to catch up. It was all there.
What?
No one apart from their team, obviously, but no one on our side sort of knew what happened.
Yeah, I caught wind of it, but like I didn't realise it was as severe as I knew he'd been taken to hospital. But I didn't know it was a heart attack. I said to her, I actually saw him because obviously he did the corner for Josh Warrington, his son, for the Lee Wood fight. I said I knew there was something wrong with you at the weigh-in. He said why? I said because I offered you a cigarette and you said no.
That's how you know. Yeah.
Something was wrong.
With Sean.
But anyway, yes, Jazza Dickens. We were there as I mentioned in Istanbul. Really set about Albert Batagaziev, and as Sonny mentioned, there wasn't supposed to win that fight. You know, it was a good fight on paper, but one that I think everybody expected Batagaziev to emerge victorious. Jazza did a very good job on him. He's a fighter full of confidence, as is, of course, Anto Cacace, so it should make for a really, really good fight.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I've been looking forward to it for a while. I mean, Jazza was supposed to box just after Christmas, wasn't he, against Tsutsumi, and then that didn't happen.
I'm glad that fight didn't happen.
And he's kind of almost got a better one, really, because I was reading something with him on the way in, and he trained with Peter Taylor in Dublin for a while, so Dublin's very familiar for him. He regards it as being kind of a home fight almost. You know, Cacace's from Belfast, he's coming from Liverpool. I don't think he really feels like Cacace's got a home advantage on that score. I don't think that necessarily counts for much anyway, even if he did. But that was a massive win against Batagaziev, and it wasn't supposed to happen. I saw Batagaziev, I thought, boxed really well against John O'Carroll, who isn't at his peak anymore and was a kind of fringe world title level guy when he was, but that was he kind of scythed him down after Jono came out of the gate quick to see if he could make an impact on him. But one thing you did notice in that fight was that he should have had a knockdown called in that fight, and it wasn't given. And you notice from watching Batagaziev that he doesn't know what to do when he gets hurt. He just immediately fires back, and he'll spring back up off a knee immediately. He doesn't take the count. He just wants to get back and get on with it. And I think they kind of looked at him, Jazza and Albert. And again, with someone like Albert, and Sonny referred to it, he's not going to look at someone like Batagaziev and have that kind of... He's not going to see the aura of the Eastern European Soviet bloc style fighter, because
he is one.
Yeah, exactly. So there's that mystique, if you like, that's gone, that's taken away. It was in Istanbul, which would have been more familiar for everybody on their team than going to like Ufa or Samara or somewhere like that in the middle of Russia and taking a fight. But it was a really good performance, and they were confident. They were really confident going into it. You could tell just by being around them, couldn't you? The days going into the fight. It's really easy, I think, to tell the difference between a kind of gung-ho confidence and a real confidence. And they're not gung-ho guys anyway, but he got there, didn't he? And he got promoted after that to full world champion. And it's something you really like to see, because he's gone about his business. He's never really complained. He's got on with it.
Had his setbacks, obviously.
Had his setbacks.
Got stopped by Kid Galahad, got stopped by Guillermo Regondo.
Got his jaw broken by Regondo.
Yeah, that was nasty, wasn't it? Second round, at the end of the second round, he got pulled out.
Yeah. And I do really rate, sorry, just speaking about him again, Albert, as, you know, I've worked with a lot of coaches over my 20 plus years in the sport, and he is definitely up there, one of the best coaches I've ever worked with, definitely. And, you know, my career could have been different, because I instead of coming back to Grant, I nearly stayed with Albert. That was my other play, and it was more just a sort of, my lifestyle is easier for me to maintain in Sheffield than it was at Marbella at the time, where it was based. And even for my last fight against Galal, because I'd accepted the fight and did the press conference before I had a trainer, like, probably my first choice pick trainer was to go over to Dubai and be with Albert. But just where I was in my head, my family life and everything, I was buying a house, etc. I just didn't want to like commit all like that, so I went and trained with Chris. But yeah, for me, Albert is definitely one of the like unsung trainers of world boxing that doesn't get talked about no way nearly as much as he should have. Even, you know, behind the scenes, he's doing a lot of the core work now with Lawrence Okoli, even though Joe Gallagher does his corner and that. Because when he's based in Dubai, he trains with Albert, and I think he's made some absolute clear night and day improvements since working with him. And yeah, I just think he's that good of a coach that any fighters that's got him in his corner, they will get some extra percents out. And his mindset of everything, and how sort of he was the Iceman. That was his nickname, and he's like an ice cold, very, very good-hearted person, and doesn't get excited. And like you said about the aura, I think was perfect, because if Jazza was training maybe with a British trainer, this Olympic, Russian, gold medalist, the tactics probably would have been, the mindset would have probably been a one way, but with, Albert in his corner, he probably fueled that belief into Jazza. No, we can stand there with this kid, and we're going to be the pro, we're going to be the veteran, like, and because it's coming from Albert, it probably went straight through, where, asking Jazza to sort of sit there and rough up a Russian gold medalist from a British man would probably be a bit harder of a sell to hear, if that makes sense. You're probably hearing, we're going to box, we'll move, we'll try and get him to fall in, like the certain tactics where he didn't really need to do that. He sort of, once the fight started going, when they was clashing head to head, it looked like Jazza was the man every single time for me.
Right, before we come on to prediction time, Sonny, you've got a couple of minutes to tell me about Bobbi Flood. Heard a lot about him. I've seen a lot of people talking.
Big ticket seller, Robert. Big ticket seller. He had his tickets for 2 weeks. He'd sold over 400. He'd sold out all his tickets straight away. Sold them out for his debut. And Bobby's a fighter that me and Anto are tremendously excited about. Working with Swifty, a tremendous amateur. And if you ask a lot of people that have closely followed Irish amateur boxing over sort of any time recently, Bobbi Flood's the pick. We was actually down looking at the national championships there for another fighter, and we discovered Bobby from, talking about this other fighter. Everyone was going, oh, that's who you're looking at. He's got Bobbi Flood in the final. He's got Bobbi Flood in the final. Every single person you spoke to, oh, he's got a hard fight in the final. And then Bobby went on to win and looked really, really good. And, the pleasure to represent him, a really nice lad as well. Had him over for one of Leo's fights. Really, really good kid. And, yeah, he's going to be a big ticket seller and has everything, in my opinion. He boxes, he's relaxed, he's tough, he's great with range, but he can knock you and take your head off as well. So, yeah, I think he's another one that I'm really, really excited about, and I think people will be pulling me after next weekend going, wow, he's a good kid. If they don't know him already, he's very, very good. Very, very good.
Okay, well, we look forward to seeing the professional debut of Bobbi Flood. But before we wrap things up, Andy, going to come to you first. We're just going to do the top two fights on the card for this weekend. So number one, Jazza Dickens versus Anto Cacace. Prediction time.
I might let my heart rule my head a little bit on this one, just because I know Jazza a little bit better, and this is not normally the kind of route I go down, but I do feel like he is flourishing at the minute, and he is on a good roll, even though it was last July that he had that fight against Batagaziev. So I'm going to go for Dickens points.
Sonny?
I don't really want to give an opinion.
No, it's not how it works on here, mate. I have to do it, so you have to do it.
No, it's your show.
I'll tell you what.
It's your show.
What you can do.
No, don't, because he's got a brilliant way of getting out of these.
I'll tell you what you can do, because this is what I'm going to do going forward when it's something that I'm covering myself.
Where's
you can
Barry
talk
when
in
you need
terms
him?
of, because obviously it's with Betfred, you can talk in terms of who would be the favourite, and you're not giving a prediction.
Yeah.
You say if you look at it logically, you could make him the favourite, but he might be a good outside bet or whatever.
Yeah,
particularly in a two-horse race. Sometimes
it's one of those that is for both reasons. Really, is Cacace has looked so good, but Jazza's form has looked world class. I thought, like, genuinely, and his toughness and his sort of mental strength and capability to sort of, he'll be getting hit with big shots, and it's like you can just see him smiling, like walking forward with his hands up. Do you know what I mean? He's like, he's built to be a fighter, but Cacace has been tremendous. I don't think he's put a foot wrong, and I think you would probably favour with the bookies Cacace, but I don't know if that's the way it's gonna go. I not only do I like both lads, so I don't want to make really an opinion for there. I think it's one of those fights where it can go one of a couple of ways, but I think it's really who gets it right in the night. And again, I've been clicheing the life out of this in a moment. It's moments. Like there'll be sort of nothing happening, a jab here, a shot getting landed. But when them moments happen, I think it'll be one of those fights. I think even though both guys more typically go the distance, catch you a bit more of a reputation of stopping your opponents. They can hurt each other. They can both probably be hurt, but then they can probably also both take quite a lot of each other's punches and still be there. That's the way I'm seeing it. I think the fight is going to sort of spill out on moments, whether it's going to be, close and like sort of, you're edging rounds on like the better shot in the moment here, or there's going to be, a mistake made. The other one capitalizes, it puts the other one in a detrimental position, and the other one takes over from there, whether stoppages or sort of gets a foothold and keeps on top of it. I think it's genuinely a really good, well-matched fight, and Jazza's got a lot of experience, and he's, when you've just become a world champion, you get that sort of like wind, but like underneath your feet, you just get that little bit of confidence, and the longer it takes to get there, the usually better it is. And it's taken Jazza a long time to get there. It's taken Jazza the longest of windiest roads to get here. It's not been straightforward. It's not been simple. He is really like one of those stories of when you tell fighters, no, just keep going. Like, don't let setbacks make you think you're not good enough, or do you know what I mean? And he is that personified, I think. And, when it's a Cinderella man, there's always another potential chapter, and I think he should be the underdog on bookies with how the careers have panned out, etc. But, I think it really is a 50-50 fight. I rate them both. Cacace probably the better fighter. You can probably say that. But Jazza has things that you can't really measure from results. Like his heart, his grit, his toughness. Like, he might have lost fights, but like, shots almost bouncing on him. He's had big cuts across his face, and he had his jaw broke by probably the best fighter in the world at the time, and his face was out here. He probably would have carried on going and getting his head punched in for rounds and rounds and rounds if they'd let him, and that was far before he is the fighter he is today. I think he's got better with age, and I think it's because he's dedicated himself, lived a clean life, been a real man of God for the last 10 however many years, and yeah, I think he could do it. So like I said, I can't with good conscience pick either one of them and genuinely mean it.
Never had you as a fencer, but anyway.
No, but sometimes with boxing, it almost has to be, because they're that well matched, and there's that many variables that I'm just guessing. If I do anything else other than sort of consider both possibility to win, I'm just guessing. Now I'd lightly favour Cacace because I think overall he is a better fighter. However, I think there's some things that Jazza has better than him that could be the switch of this fight.
Yeah, the better fighter in inverted commas doesn't always win the fight.
No.
I'm going to lean towards Cacace. I think Cacace is just a bit longer. I think that Jazza might struggle to close the distance a little bit. Obviously, Cacace's got some good pop as well. I think it's a good fight. I expect it to be entertaining from like a technical point of view. I think the way that Jazza sets up will make for an interesting fight. But I do lean towards Cacace.
You can't just copy what me and Andy said.
I didn't. I actually picked somebody.
You can't just copy what me and Andy said and just sort of like use slightly different words.
I'm going to go with
Anto. If we both said Jazza, you would have said Jazza.
Anto Cacace by decision. I'm always going for the outlet picks, to be honest.
He went third.
But we're not. We don't have enough time to go for the second fight on the card. But Sonny wouldn't pick a winner anyway, so we're okay.
We could just give it.
But quickly before we go,
one name.
O'Leary.
Go Maxi Hughes.
Very quick turnaround for Maxi Hughes.
Yes.
Hard fight.
Yeah, I'm gonna go.
That might be the thing that gets him.
I'm gonna go for O'Leary points.
Yeah.
But anyway, what did you want to say quickly?
Giorgio Visioli, Levi Giles.
Yeah, good fight.
Good fight for Visioli.
Yeah, we'll talk about that when it comes up.
Which is next week.
Yeah, we'll do next
I'm not going to be here next week, so
don't worry about it. Anyway, we've got no time left, but thank you very much for stopping by this week, to our regular co-host, Mr. Andy Clarke, and to our special guest co-host, the former IBF flyweight champion of the world, Mr. Sonny Edwards. Thanks very much for stopping by, and thanks to you for watching us here on The Sportsman. We'll catch up with you next week.